Hey everybody, uglyShader here with another YouTube video tutorial. Now, while I was digging around looking for the trigonometric math equations necessary for the rotation portion of the advanced mapping node I made, one of the websites I stumbled across had this playing off in the corner with the caption of four-dimensional cube rotating in Euclidean space. And I couldn't stop staring at it. I was really digging on it, so I decided I had to go ahead and try and recreate it. And I found a really simple method for recreating it, which in a sense is a good thing. It makes it really easy to reproduce this kind of object animation. Unfortunately, the simplicity of it has a really big limitation, and if you watch this upper corner right here, you'll notice that limitation, the fact that this corner that keeps coming up is like a different size every time it's coming up and stuff. And that's because there are no real pivot points in this mesh. Every time it shifts around, it's just folding and twisting and horribly mutilating these poor corners of the mesh, and the actual length of the bars is being twisted and distorted as well. And that's the limitation, because if you go any thicker than what these framing pieces already are, or much thicker at all, you'll not only notice the size differential in the corners, but you'll start to see folding and tearing and stuff like that in the length of the bars as far as the mesh is concerned. So it just it's really simple and easy to produce, so it's a really cool little animation, but it has its limitations. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get into that real fast. First thing I can do is tell it I'm using Blender, I guess, and start my screencast display so that you can see what's going on my screen over here, or at least kind of what I'm doing. Real simple setup. I'm in cycles right now. There's nothing in my scene at all. It's completely empty. I don't even have a camera in here right now. And I have my node editor open for when we throw materials on it later, and my timeline open. And first thing I'm going to do is, when it comes to animating it, I just wanted to keep it really super simple, so I went with each animation step of it moving through itself was 100 frames long. That way it made figuring everything out really easy, and I tried a whole bunch of different ways of animating it as it moved, and wound up finding that the one that looked the best, or the one that was playing in that video anyways, was honestly the easiest and simplest one to do. So because I did 100 steps, or 100 frames for every step of the animation, and technically for the center of the cube to rotate back around to the outside of itself, or back around to the outside of itself and back inside, it would be 4 full steps. So I just went ahead and set that to 400 frames. And then I did a custom frame rate of 40 frames a second, just to keep the animation 10 seconds long. So that way, as I click play and play through the animation, it's a 10-second long animation. And alright, let's go ahead and get to it. So first things first, we need a cube. And I'm just going to start by doubling the size of this cube. So I'm going to hit S for scale and 2 to times it by 2, basically. Just takes whatever shape or scale it had originally and multiplies it by 2. And that'll be our inner cube. Now we need our outer cube, so I'm just going to Shift D to duplicate that cube, hit S to scale, and double the size, so just 2. So now we have an inner cube and an outer cube. I hit Z to pull up wireframe for my 3D view so we can see both cubes. Now, with both cubes selected, select one with right click, then Shift right click to select the other. Hold Control and hit J to join the two objects together. Now they are a single object, and I can go into edit mode and manipulate both of them at the same time, which is needed for this. So now we're in edit mode, we're still in wireframe so that we can see the inside, and we want to switch ourselves over to edge selection. That was Control Tab to pull up that menu there. And with edge selection selected, or our edge selection option or whatever, we're going to go ahead and connect all of the edges of the internal cube to the corresponding edge of the outside cube. So like this top right edge right now, from our perspective, we will connect to the top right edge of the cube, and then just press F to create a face between your two selected edges. And we will just work our way around the top of the cube, creating faces that connect the inner edge to the outer edge, all the way around the cube. And now that we have the top done, we're going to do the same thing for the bottom. So that back edge and that back bottom edge, the side of that one now. Oops. So all three of those, then all three of those, and now because it's the last one, we have a closed area, so we can grab all four of these. You should actually also be able to hold Alt and ring or edge select, ring select, or whatever, and no, it's not letting me. So whatever, just shift and right click to get all four of your edges, and then F to place a face across them. So now all four of the top edges of the cube on the inside are connected to the outside cube. All four of the bottom edges of the inside cube are connected to the outside cube. Now we need the side edges. And since we have the tops and the bottoms done, these are all fours. And yeah, I figured I grabbed the wrong one. So there's that one. There's that one. This one. And whoa, missed. There we go. That one. So now all of the inside cube edges are connected to the outside cube edges with faces. That's a majority of our construction. We'll have one more step to go through that's similar to that, but other than that, that's most of the construction. So now we can go ahead and back out of edit mode, just hit tab, and we're still in wireframe mode. And we can see in wireframe mode that when we attach those faces, it basically just produced a single edge attaching the corner of the cube to the corner of our frame. Those are the primary edges that the faces are connected in between. So this face right here is just connected to this inside cube edge, this outside cube edge, and then it's got two bordering edges that were created when we created the face, which happen to go from the corner of the inside cube to the corner of the outside cube. So now what we want is basically a cube that looks like this, only without wireframe view on. And that's as simple as coming over to our properties window, selecting the modifiers category, and adding a wireframe modifier. And now here's where the size comes in. Because again, if you go something nice and super thick like this, which admittedly looks pretty cool, unfortunately when it comes to that inner face right here, stretching forward to the level of this face, then growing to the scale of this face, and then trying to slide backwards to where this face, where this face rests, it's going to fold this corner around on itself and then stretch it and then slide it that way, and it's just going to cause all kinds of distortion in the mesh. Unfortunately, that's just one of the drawbacks behind the method that I animated this with and how I constructed it, but again, it's really fast and simple. So anyway, the thickness on our wireframe modifier, I wouldn't go above 0.1 width, just so that when you're actually watching the animation, you don't see too much distortion in everything. And admittedly, that's not too horrible. I mean, there's enough thickness there to actually be able to see. So we can apply that modifier. Now we need the faces. If I open that animation back up, we actually have faces on our cube. They're transparent faces, but we have faces on our cube. So to put faces on the cube, we just got to come back in here and go back into edit mode. And then now I'm pretty much guaranteeing our ring select is going to work. So if I hold and get the right edge, there we go. Selected the whole loop inside there, and just press F to give it a face. And then work our way around through all of them and give, stick to the inside cube for now, but give all of them faces everywhere that should have a face on each cube, as well as all of the angular faces that sit in between. All of these just need to be filled in. Control Z that, filled in with faces so that we have the original full appearance of our object back. So one there. There's the top. Now we need the bottom. And when we animate it, we'll have it in wireframe, so we won't be bothered by the appearance of these faces. They're not going to get in the way or anything like that. So there's the bottom. Now we need the sides. Oops. Oh, come on. There we go. I was going to say there's multiple faces on each frame piece, but only one set of faces that loops all the way around. Alright, now we need the 6 primary faces of the outside cube. I know you're one of these. There you go. That one there. Oh, come on. Give me the full ring. There we go. And that one, now we need the top and the bottom. There's the bottom. There's the top. So now our cube is done. That's all the construction necessary for it. We can back out of there and hit Z to go into wireframe mode. And now we can see that basically all of our lines have extra lines, which are representing the new faces that we just added. Now the somewhat repetitive part, but still easy, is the animation of it. To animate it, basically we're going to parent its vertices, only not actually parent them. We're going to hook its vertices to other objects and then use those other objects to manipulate it. So it'd be like if I added another cube and drug this cube over here and then selected this as my primary selection and this is a secondary selection, that's why it's the darker orange, and then hit Control P to parent, and parented this to this object. Now, whenever I move this object, it moves the other object with it. Their transform and rotation and stuff like that are fixed together. But we're not actually going to parent our vertices to an object per se. We're just going to hook them to an object because, I don't know, that was the easiest way I could see to do this. So with our cube selected, our Tesseract selected, let's go ahead and hit Tab to go into edit mode. And we're going to want to switch over to vertex selection. That, with the vertex selection and the wireframe, gives us the option of just kind of lining up more or less on the cube and then selecting all the vertices associated with a single face. Makes it nice and simple to grab everything. So, and for our animation, we're going to have this face, this outside face here, that face there, and then the same thing on the other side, this inside face here, and the outside face on that same side. These are the 4 faces that are going to move. You know, this face will move from this position to this position, while this one moves to this position and grows to the size of that one. And at the same time, this face here will move to the position of this face, and then this face will move down to where that face was and shrink at the same time. So we just want to set them up as 4 individual faces, basically, that we can grab and manipulate. So we're going to grab this one here, and Control H to hook, and we're just going to hook to a new object. And what that does is if I exit out of tab and zoom in, you can see it just gave us an empty object there. Just something represented by a little dot in our screen that's not actually a real object in the environment. You know, it won't show up in your render or anything like that. It's just an empty object. And when I move that empty object, it moves the vertices that are hooked to it. If I scale that empty object, it scales the vertices that are hooked to it. So that'll be how we control everything in our animation. Alright, so now we just need 4 more or 3 more of those. So back into edit mode, A to deselect everything. We grab this set. Oop, did I miss one? Nope, got them all. And then Control H. Hook to new object. Deselect everything, grab all of these. Control H. Hook to new object. And one last set. A to deselect everything, C to bring up the circle select, select everything there, and then Control H to hook to new object. Alright, we're done playing with our cube, our tesseract. Now we're just going to play with our little animation points. And this is the rather repetitive part, unfortunately. So say we start with this one, and I'm going to hit N to bring up my transform menus. As you can see, original scale of 2 on this cube, and then doubled to a scale of 4 on this cube. You'd expect it to be at 4 on the x-axis hanging out both sides. Unfortunately, because we collected several vertices that weren't all perfectly lined up and then hooked the object to them, it picked the median point between those vertices as where its location was going to be. So we have 3.9 blah blah blah, and I want just 4. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that one to 4, grab this one, set that one to 2. Oh, I hate when I do that. This one will be a -2. Oh, not -4, -2. Getting ahead of myself. This one will be a -4. And that just makes our animation a little easier to deal with as far as positioning these points. I'm actually going to go at it from this side so that -4 is on the left and works towards +4 on the right. That just, I guess, makes more sense to me mathematically. Alright, so our -4 one, like I said, I did my animation based off 100 frame intervals. And in 100 frames, we want this face here, this outside -4 face, to move to the position of this face. So all we got to do, and like it's not changing its size or anything, it's just moving from there to there. So we're just going to come up to its location when we have this empty object hooked to these vertices selected, and it stays in line with the face. So I didn't even take the time to name them, because I mean, well, you know, which empty object is this? Well, it's the one to the vertices that are always stuck perfectly in parallel with it. You know, it's kind of easy to figure out. Anyhow, we're going to start by giving its location a keyframe at the -4, and then 100 frames in. So set to 100 frames, and we want it to move from this location of -4 to this one's location, which is +4. So at 100, did it again. So at 100 frames in, we're simply going to take the -4 and switch it to a +4, and then keyframe that value. So over the course of those 100 frames, it's going to move from where it started to that frame. And also it's got a Bezier curve for its interpolation. It starts moving slowly and then picks up speed as it reaches the center point. And then as it leaves center point and heads towards the back end of its journey, it actually starts slowing down again. That's a default for Blender, just because like physical animations, people moving and stuff, is almost never linear movement. It's pretty much always some sort of a curve-based movement. So that just helps animations by default look more natural. And after playing around with linear and the Bezier curve, adjusting the curves and stuff like that, and just playing around with the animation speeds as far as how the curves manipulated this form or this tesseract, I found that just the default curve that it automatically assigns tends to look best. Anyway, so there we go. From frame 1 to frame 100, this moves to that point. Next will be this one. So from frame 1 to frame 100, it needs to move from here to this point, and it also needs to double in size. So not only will we have to keyframe its location for frame 1, we're also going to have to keyframe its scale. And again, that's just pressing the I key while hovering over these. If you wanted to keyframe just a specific variable, you can right-click it and insert single keyframe. So right-clicking these, by the way, brings up all kinds of settings you might not be used to or have played with yet if you're still new at Blender. Definitely worth clicking and giving a read just to see what's in there. Maybe Googling some of the things you're not aware of or how they work and stuff like that, just to get a better feel for animating things in Blender. Anyhow, I'm just going to go ahead and keyframe all of them because the scale on all of them is going to have to change. Now, as we make it from frame 1 to frame 100, I want it to move from its current position of -2 to this one's position of -4, and I also want it to double in size. So a scale of 1 will turn to a scale of 2. So let's go ahead and skip forward to frame 100, and then set this at -4, and keyframe it, and then set all of these at 2. And then again, I for keyframe. Now, if we rewind, we can see that 2 of our pieces are making the appropriate motion. So let's get the other 2 done. So this one is going to move from a +2 to the -2 of that one's location, and it's not changing in size. So keyframe its location, skip forward to frame 100, change its +2 to a -2, and keyframe it. And then this one needs to go from its +4 to the +2 that this one sits at. And during that motion, it needs to reduce in size by half so that it becomes the same size as that cube. So let's keyframe its location and its scale at frame 1, skip forward to frame 100, and it needs to go from the +4 that it was at to the +2 that the other one was at, and its scale, its size, needs to be cut in half. So instead of 1, we're going to go 0.5 on all of them, and we keyframe both of those. And that should be all 4 faces for the first step of the animation. And there it is. And like if I were to cut this to a 100 frame animation, oops, wrong adjustment, 100 frame animation, technically you could be done right there. You know, it's technically already a loopable animation. It's got that little jump in it, though, that you might notice, and that's not as bad when you go through all 4 steps and work it so that started getting a weird optical illusion where it looked like it was just spinning on its z-axis. Sorry. Anyway, this center cube that moves out and its first half becomes the outside of the larger cube. If you work it so that that center cube works all the way around and then comes back inside, it's more or less corrected the distortion and you don't get that jump out of it. So we're going to go ahead and I'll do a couple more real quick, and then I'll pause and just finish the rest of it out. So here we are at frame 1, everything's as is. We skip forward to frame 100, and that's where everything's been changed to. So now everything is step forward 1. Now all we have to do is go through it again. So this one, again, it needs to go from the -4 it's at to the +4 on the other side, and it doesn't need to change in scale. So we don't have to worry about keyframing its scale, but we would have to worry about keyframing its location. However, because it's just coming out of a location transition, its location is already keyframed. And that's going to be the case for the rest of the animation. The only thing we're going to have to worry about making sure we keyframe at the start of a change is going to be our scale, from when these ones move down to these ones, or these ones move up to this one. Because the transition from this point to this point doesn't require a scale change, therefore we don't insert a keyframe, which means this face that's currently right here used to be right here. It didn't go through a scale change and therefore didn't have a keyframe set for it, which means when we come to this one, it doesn't currently have a keyframe on its scale. But for this next step in the animation, it's going to need to go from its current size up to the size of this face, and therefore will need a change in its scale. So when we get to this one, we have to remember to add a keyframe to our scale before we move to the next part of the animation. So this one at frame 100 is at -4. At frame 200 will be at +4, keyframed. This one at frame 100 is at the -2, and its scale is at 1. I already inserted the keyframe for that, so I can just set this to a -4. I felt like I hit more than one key. And scale this to 2. And, hey, I missed. Keyframe that. And now, unfortunately, because of where this one has moved down into just where things are, I can't quite see where my third spot's supposed to be. One of these is stacked. I don't remember which it is. So I'm just going to skip back to frame 100 where everything was all lined up. So this one at frame 100 is at +2. At frame 200 it'll be at -2. And its size doesn't need to change. So we skip forward to frame 200. Set its keyframe, or its location at -2 on the X, and give it a keyframe. And again, its scale isn't getting keyframed because it didn't make a change in scale. So on our third section of the animation, we have to make sure that when we come to that second spot right there again, that we give it a keyframe on its scale so that it's ready to grow from this point to the outside of the outer cube or whatnot. And now back to 100 real fast. And this last one, it needs a keyframe on its scale because it's going to shrink. So now frame 200. This one's going to go to +2, get a keyframe. This one's going to go to 0.5 down the board and get a keyframe. And there we go. There's the two first stages of our animation. And like I said, this is the repetitive part. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and just finish the other two by myself and come back to you. See you in a minute. Alright, we're back and we're done. So I have all four stages of the animation taken care of. First stage, second stage, third stage, and then the fourth stage where the center cube ends up being back in the place of the center cube. And again, that keeps it from having a weird shape changing, size changing jump at the end of your animation. So long as you bring what was originally in the middle back to the middle before you finish your animation. Alright, now, unfortunately we still have the problem that if I turn wireframe off, we get this. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, is kind of cool looking, but that does also illustrate the folding of the mesh. And we can see the folds and the distorted corners appearing and stuff like that. So that does very clearly, there's the base cube. So yeah, in fact, we can pause it, go to the beginning. So yeah, there's our base cube. There it is after it's twisted around itself once. There it is after it's twisted around itself twice. And there it is after it's twisted around itself the fourth time. Almost cleaned itself up a little bit on the fourth time. But yeah, so as you can see, for a large scale animation, this wouldn't work very well. The only reason you can really get away with it is the transparent sides, as well as the diameter of the frame being smaller. And speaking of transparent sides, we get a black face there because the normal's not showing to us. There's another normal not showing to us, and another normal not showing to us. So with our cube selected, we're going to come up here to our data tab or whatnot in the properties window and turn on double-sided faces. Now that will slow down renders and stuff like that, but that takes care of not being able to see the normal because the face has been twisted around to the back side. Alright, now I'm not going to go super in-depth with materials on this. I think this was more just about the animation, but we can throw some materials on real quick. And in fact, I should probably pause this because I need two different materials on this cube. So with it selected, let's go ahead and add a new material. And for now, I'm going to just put an emission shader on there so I don't have to deal with much noise or anything like that in a render. And in my properties window, I'm going to scroll down here to my materials category, and we'll just name this one frame real fast. And then I'm going to make one more and name this one, I don't know, panels. Did I actually get the D in there? PA. I hate this keyboard. It's so sensitive. And I'm always sitting kind of crooked when I'm out here recording tutorials, so. Anyway, so there's our two different materials. And for the panels or whatnot, for now, I'm just going to throw a transparent shader on them so that we can't really see them much at all. Because I don't really want to see them much at all. Now we need to assign those faces. So back to wireframe mode so we can see what's going on. And tab into edit mode. And then we'll switch over to face selection. And the faces are actually kind of easy to spot because they're this little floaty black dot with no lines anywhere near it. You know, we don't want the faces that are part of the frame. We just want to select the empty faces in between the frames so that we can make them transparent. And yeah, so that's just a matter of finding all the black dots floating all by themselves for some reason. So oh, no, see, I selected a face piece there, or one of the frame pieces. there's one. It doesn't really help that the empty objects are chilling there, but actually I don't think I can see dots for the empty objects right now, so even if there is an empty object, if it's a black dot, I haven't selected it. Like here's an orange dot, but there's a black dot. Face I need to select. There's a face I need to select. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. They're just all over the place. There's one there. And let's see. That one right on top, actually. And it's starting to look like I got all of them. Easiest way to check is just press H to hide everything and then Z to go back to wireframe. And I don't have any big faces, or sorry, Z to exit wireframe. And yeah, I don't have any big faces hanging out here, so I'm going to go ahead and say I got them all. So let's Z to go back to wireframe, Alt H to unhide that stuff, and with all of these faces but none of the frames selected, I'm going to come over to my materials and select that panels material I created, and click Assign. And that will assign that material to just the faces I have selected. So now I can hit Shift Z. Well, actually, I'm going to back out of Tab and out of wireframe, and I can hit Shift Z, and I actually just have the cube. You know what? While we're here, let's go into here, down to Performance, and tell it to not start rendering till like 512. That'll give us a little bit slower like frame rate in our animation and stuff, but keep our cube looking much cleaner while it does it. Granted, the only way I can get away with that is the video card I'm on. Alright, so yeah, as you can see, you can even actually still pick up a little bit of that distortion if you catch it at the right angle, like you can see it on that corner that just came up. There's a point on that corner. I may have gone a little thicker, maybe 0.1 is a little too thick with the wireframe for this style of animation. But again, it's just a super simple way of quickly animating that kind of structure. And then yeah, for our transparent planes here, we can just go ahead and let's add another shader. Let's add a translucent shader. Give it like kind of a reddish color or something. Why not? Mix those two together. And let's use a noise texture to mix them. Plug that in. And then let's pause this so we can actually see what we're doing. Throw a color ramp in here real fast to kind of control that noise texture. Basically kind of have a fine-tuned brightness contrast kind of adjustment to it. Let's turn that pattern up to about 15. There we go. That's basically a rough draft of that cube I created. I had some refraction shaders and stuff in there to kind of make it more reflective, glass-like or whatnot. I think maybe a glossy shader in there. And I don't think that my frame was nearly so bright, like a strength of 0.25 or something like that. Or maybe it was that I used a texture or some sort of set. Yeah, I used some sort of setup to control the strength on my frame or whatnot to give it that kind of black, swirly, metalish kind of look to it or whatever. But yeah, there you go. There's the Tesseract animation, the four-dimensional cube rotating in Euclidean space. And when it comes to a view on it, as far as how to try and get a view on it, I find you get the least amount of optical illusions if you kind of level yourself out with the top so that you're just kind of at a shallow angle across the top right there, and then the point that's closest to you and the point that's furthest away from you offset by a good portion right there so that they're not lined up like that. If you line it up like that, or give it a corner or a straight on view, you get a really unique effect where it just kind of looks like it's twisting and being squeezed into the shape of a diamond while it twists. It doesn't actually give you the actual appearance of the motion you animated into it. Same thing with a completely heads-on view. You get just kind of this weird shifty tunnel where the faces get further and closer. It's weird. I mean, it's kind of cool and all, but the whole point of the animation was to be able to see that the center cube is actually moving outward, stretching up and becoming the outer cube. And yeah, I find that that kind of shallow angle looking down on it where the two corner points are separated a bit tends to be about the best angle on it. Anyhow, there you go. There's the little animated tesseract for my animation, just obviously different materials. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something from it. If you think it was a waste of your time, I'm sorry. You probably should have turned it off sooner or something. If you have any ideas for other things that you'd like me to try and do or whatnot, or even if it's something I haven't learned about yet or whatnot, I'll try and figure it out. Just go ahead and drop that in the comments down below. Other than that, yeah, you guys keep enjoying creating things the way you want to do it. Until next time, catch y'all later.